Hello, my name's Jeff Messier. I'm a professor in electrical and software engineering in the Schulich School of Engineering. And this is a bit of a kind of a supplementary tutorial video meant to go along with my lecture on procedure calls in AVR assembly language. And the purpose of this video is to get you ready for the class assignment, where I'm going to give you a C program and ask you to write the assembly language. And I've got two reasons for making this video. One is there are a certain set of rules that I want you to follow in the assignment that I glossed over a little bit in the lecture, and so I wanted to just come back and sort of make sure everything was clear. And also, this is probably one of the more complicated things we're going to be learning in class, and it doesn't hurt to just see another example of it, basically. Okay, so here we've got the MPLAB IDE, and like all sort of assembly language assignments in this course, I really do advise you to do them in MPLAB in the simulator, because then you can kind of run your code and check what's going on and make sure your stack answers are correct and all that kind of stuff. And so the assignment is going to basically involve giving you a little bit of kind of, a little bit of C code here that doesn't really do anything in particular, but and then the goal is to write the assembly language equivalent of it. And I'm going to give you, like I said, a few rules for the assignment. I just kind of want to go through those as I work through this tutorial example. So down here we have the assembly language. I haven't written here very much yet, but you'll notice the first two lines of main, involve initializing two local variables. The first one M0 to 8, the second one M1 to 10. And so in the assembly language, I'm going to create a text label called main, and then all of the code in main is going to go into this this section of the assembly language file. And the very first thing I want to do is initialize these two local variables. Now, in the assignment, I'm going to specify a rule that all local variables have to be stored in call saved registers. And the first local variable should be stored in R2, the second one in R3, and so on. Now, it seems like kind of an arbitrary rule. I could have stored these local variables in any of the registers, really. But this is I'm trying to give a little bit of insight here into how a compiler works. Even though there's, total flexibility on how we could implement this as humans, compilers usually are built by, just sort of making rule decisions as to what registers are going to be used in what way. And so when I give you rules on the assignment like this, you can kind of think of this as like, maybe this is sort of like a little rule that a compiler might use. And so that means we have to store a variable M0 in call save register R2 and M1 in call save register R3. And so the way we're going to do that, you'll notice here I've already created a few data labels. The first one called M0, which is got the value of 8. The second one, M1, which is a value of 10. In the assignment, I allow you to assume that none of the assignment or none of the values that we're going to be working with are going to be greater than 256. So you can use just single 8-bit registers to store everything. And so I'm going to do LDS R2, M0, LDS R3, M1, and this is store local vars in call saved registers. Okay, and that sort of sets us up for the first two lines of code. Now, the next thing we have to implement is this call to F1. And so, like I did in the lectures, we're going to create text labels F1, or for each one of the functions. So we're going to have a label F1 and F2. We're going to put those up there. Whoops. So the first thing we need to do is to implement the call to F1 is populate the registers that contain the function arguments. And we have two function arguments. And we're going to follow the rules that I laid out in the lectures. So the function arguments are in, the higher registers. The highest one is R25, and then we sort of count down from there. And that means that the first argument, M0, that we've stored in R2 gets stored in the argument register pair R25, R24. Now, I did mention that, we're going to assume that none of our values can be, greater than 256. So we never have to use two registers to create a 16-bit number. But because the compiler insists that we always use those register pairs for our function arguments, we're still going to use them, but the top register is just going to be equal to 0. And so I'll just type the code out to make that clear. So we're going to initialize register 25 to the value of 0. And we're going to initialize R24 to be equal to R2. And this the first argument, so these two registers create the first function argument that we have, and that's equal to M0. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second function argument. Again, the function argument registers start at 25, and we just sort of count down from there. So argument 1 was 25, 24. Argument 2 is going to be 23, 22. Oops. Move R22, R3. There, we're ready. So that's our two function arguments, and we're going to call F1. And this implements the call F1, M0, M1. Okay, so F1 is going to be our implementation of this two function argument function, I guess. And you'll notice in F1 we do have a local variable x. Now, to keep following our rules, local variables always have to be stored in call saved registers. And a function always starts with call saved register R2, and then if it needs more, R3, R4, and so on. Now, because this is a callee function, this is not main, this is a callee function, F1 has to preserve the value of R2 on the stack before it's allowed to use it. And so the very first thing we're going to do in F1 is push R2 onto the stack. And that preserves call save register R2. Now, once we've saved the value of R2 on the stack, we're free to use it. And so we've got a little bit of work here to do. We want to add the values of argument 1 and argument 2 together and store those in our local variable. And so I'm going to initialize R2 with the value in R24. So that's A1. And then I'm going to add R22 to it, and that's it. So we've implemented x equals A1 plus A2. Now, the next thing we're going to do is call function F2. And so F2 has a single function argument. And so we're just going to use registers R25, R24. And the rules that we're going to be following in the assignment is that if a callee function uses the function argument registers, that those values need to be preserved on the stack as well. And so we're going to push R25 and push R24 to the stack. Serve argument 1 registers. And now that we've preserved those registers onto the stack, we're free to use them to get ready for our call to F2. Now, I'm going to take a little shortcut here. I already know that R25 contains the value of 0, so I'm just going to leave that alone. And I'm just going to move the value of R2 into R24. And now we're ready to go. So register pair 2425 contains the value of our local variable x. And now we can just call F2. So this is F2 with the argument x. Okay, so now let's take a look at our leaf function F2. So F2 implements the single argument function. And just like all the other functions, it has to use call saved registers to store its local variables. It has one local variable x. And so the first thing it needs to do is push R2 onto the stack, preserve, call R2. And now we can get to work on it. So it looks like we store our function argument a1 into local variable x, and then we add 1 to that value. So we move R24 into R2. We're going to actually, because there's no add assembly language function that takes a numerical argument, we're going to need to create a constant equal to 1. There's no rules around what registers we have to use to contain constants. So I'm going to use a call used register that we don't have to worry about, like, preserving on the stack. So I'm going to go, I'm just going to use register 18. So I'm going to, load the value 1 into register 18. And then I'm going to add R18 to R2. And that's it. So that makes x equal to a1 plus 1. And that's all the function does. And then it returns the value of x. And so this is the first time we have a return value. And for 8-bit values, the register R24 is used for the return value, which again is there's a lot of traffic on register 24, right? Because it's used both for function return values as well as function arguments, but that's okay because we preserved everything on the stack, so we can go ahead and use it if we want to. So we're going to move R2 into R24, and that's it. Oh, and then the last thing we need to do is restore the value of R2, right? Because we don't just push call saved registers onto the stack in our function to save the value. Once we're finished using those call saved registers, we have to restore those values. So I'm going to go pop R2. And then return. And so now finally we're starting to back out of our chain of function calls. This is the full implementation for our leaf function. And now we just need to go back to F1 and add the code that will allow it to return back to main. So there's not, as far as the C code is concerned, not too much work to do here in F1. So we've called the function F2 and we're just going to straight away, return the value that F2 gives to us. But the assembly language code is actually going to there is going to be a little bit of work that we need to do here. So the last time we left F1, we had just finished calling F2, and now we have some return value that we need to send back to main. We've also pushed 3 values onto the stack, and we're going to have to pop all 3 of those off. And this is kind of a good check for you when you are writing your code. If you push something onto the stack, you should be popping it off of the stack as well. And that is what we're going to do. So the first thing I want to do is I want to preserve the return value of F2 because we're going to be overwriting register 24 with pop. So I'm going to temporarily store the return value into a call used register. I'm going to use register 18 again. Remember, register 18, these call used registers, there's no guarantees about preserving the values in them if we call or return from a function, so we can just go ahead and use them. So I'm going to move my cursor out of the way there, R24 into register 18. Now I'm going to restore our function arguments. Oops. And now I'm going to get ready to return. And so I'm going to move the return value from F1, back into register 24, because register 24 is going to contain the return value. Or sorry, I'm going to take the return value for F2 and I'm going to put it back into register 24 because register 24 is going to hold the return value for F1 as well. And for those of you who are very astute, right, you can say, well, I've just kind of done a bunch of work for nothing because R24 was already did contain the return value for F2, and then I just overrode it with this pop statement, and then I just had to fix the fact that I overrode it. That's true, but again, remember, we are trying to, in a sense, kind of emulate the really robotic steps that a compiler program would call. And so because we pushed R24 and R25 onto the stack up here, we have to pop them off to clear those values off the stack. So if you push something on the stack, you've got to get rid of it. Now, would it have been more efficient to pop those 2 values into some garbage call used register and then leave R24 alone? It would have been. And when you enable optimization on a compiler, it starts to look at these kind of clever tricks that it can use to kind of make your code run a little bit faster. But for now, we're behaving as a very unoptimized compiler. But this sets the F1 return value. I'm going to restore the value of R2. And then we can return. And that's it. Then we return, here in the main function. There's nothing else there. We don't have to write anything. And this is the sort of the complete implementation. And so, like I said, this is very similar to the lecture, the procedure call lecture. And it's just, one more example, which is useful to look at as well. There's a few rules that I follow here that I didn't follow in the lecture that you're going to need to use in the assignment. And, like I said, it's just another example that you have to work with. And this is a little bit of a preview for the exam as well, because you're going to be doing something similar to this on the exam, and the rules are going to be similar as well.